Well, hello. I'm Scott. I'm excited to be here. I think of Chicago as like Milwaukee South because I'm a native to Milwaukee. Yeah, I didn't think that one was going to go over very well. But as was stated, my company is called Evenica. And in everything we do at Evenica, we have this kind of underlying obsession with the idea of potential, specifically human potential. And, when we think about potential, part of what's so great about it, or what I get excited about, is it's sort of this like hidden thing, right? It's these latent qualities. It's like your superpower that just needs to be unleashed. It's like, in a Marvel movie or something, it's like the superhero who we don't know anything about yet, but they've got great character, and then the thing happens, and then they become who they're supposed to be. That's kind of the way I think about potential. It's like the superpower. And for me personally, I care a lot about potential because for the majority of my life, I've been making the case for my own potential. The reason for that is, growing up in Milwaukee, like I said, grew up in not the greatest neighborhood, not the greatest home life. And as a child, I had a lot of health issues. Had pretty significant breathing issues, had a small hole in my heart, and was in and out of the hospital pretty regularly. A lot of interrupted sleep, a lot of days missed at school, which creates all sorts of challenges. And then at the age of 7, I was diagnosed with a neurological disorder called Tourette syndrome. Just recently, just to put it out there, I just recently started even sharing that with people. Some of my closest friends, family members didn't even know about that until recently, that I just got comfortable sharing that. So just keep that in the back of your mind as we start to think about resumes, as we start to think about the distance traveled for individuals, the challenges that people face. So as I said, had a lot of health issues, and so on paper, I was not the greatest candidate to do a lot of things, right? I was often told I couldn't participate in gym class, couldn't play sports. Again, was sort of put into a different category when it came to school because of the school I had missed, and sometimes I was even on medication that made me sort of sleepy. And so most of the adults in my life, or I think as Adam Grant calls it, like the scaffolding system, the people that should have been there to really sort of encourage me and help me through it, they did the best they could, but most of them spent a lot of their time and energy telling me about what I shouldn't expect, right? About, don't go too far, don't expect too much, don't dream too big. And they told me this, again, because they were trying to help, but they were really trying to tell me to sort of level set my expectations because I had a ceiling, right? I had a limit. The one person in my life who didn't do that was somebody near and dear to my heart. She's no longer with us, but was my Nana, my grandmother. She was 4'9" of like pure fiery energy. Never made it past the 8th grade, but learned every day and was probably the smartest person I've ever met in my life, for that reason. And I remember one day in particular being at her house and probably kind of feeling sorry for myself after the Tourette syndrome diagnosis. And she was trying to comfort me and just telling me I had so much potential, just kept saying that. And I just looked at her and I said, I don't even know what that means, right? I was 7, 8, something like that. And in true Nana fashion, she said, well, we're going to change that. She grabbed me by the hand and pulled me over to her bookshelf, which was, like her favorite place in the world. And on her bookshelf, she had these like leather-bound encyclopedias. Right, and she loved these encyclopedias because she could just learn about anything at any time she wanted. She took me over there and we started to read about potential. We started to look into the definition, we started to look into what this meant, connected to movement and all sorts of things. So, quick question, do we have any sort of fellow nerds out there? Can anybody tell me the first law of motion from Sir Isaac Newton? Because that was one of the sort of key elements of potential. You don't have to raise your hand, just say it, man. Yeah, pretty much. An object in motion will stay in motion, or an object at rest will stay at rest unless an unbalanced force is acted upon it, right? So an unbalanced force. So when we think about, an unbalanced force as it pertains to the world of work, I connect that to job opportunity, right? So when we think about the way that we are currently in our, our current system, the reliance on things like resumes and other things, we look at job opportunities, we look at individuals and their potential, and we base all of our assumptions about what they can do based on what they've done before and what they're willing to share on paper, right? So again, remember, I didn't share anything about my diagnosis of Tourette syndrome until just a few years ago when I stopped even needing a resume, right? So many of us are in this position, and the challenge is that quite often people are not given opportunities because they are judged just based on the words on a page. Now, I think we can all agree, I'm assuming, but if you disagree with this, please tell me, but resumes are kind of like hot garbage, right? They suck, right? Does anybody in this room think that resumes are like the best business tool on the planet? Good, that would have been a bad thing, so good. But if I also asked you, if I came up to you and said, hey, I know this person, great person, I've known them for years, I've worked with them, I've seen them up close, I know everything that they can do, I see that you have this position that's open with your company, and it's exactly what they do, and they've done it for years, and they're like the best in the world at it, and you just haven't met them yet, what's the first thing you're gonna ask me for? Their resume. Why? I'm serious, why? Process. Why? Because there's nothing else, right? I mean, that's you could say LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is just another resume. But effectively, we've been in this sort of spot where we don't have another option. And so what organizations are forced to do is they look at resumes and they try to match them to job descriptions, which are also just, any really proud authors of job descriptions in the room? Anybody feel like they're really great? Cool. But job descriptions and resumes are pretty terrible. They don't distill the essence of what needs to happen in a job, and they certainly don't tell the story about a human being, about the potential, about the distance traveled, about the work that's been done to get to this point. So we're in this position, and for me personally, as I said, I started with this diagnosis. I had a couple of people, I had some opportunities that people believed in me, and they were a catalyst, right? They were that unbalanced force. And so that kid who couldn't participate in gym class played college football. That kid who missed a lot of school went on to pursue a PhD. And so that happens because of an unbalanced force. But if you didn't notice, and you probably don't know some of this, but I'm a straight white dude. So opportunity is more easily found, or is more easily, sort of set my way than it is for everybody. And so I had a couple of, big breaks, a couple of, lucky chances, a couple of great mentors, I had things that happened that got me to a certain point. And so to get to that point, many people don't have those same opportunities. And this is something that, to their credit, was acknowledged by the folks at Manpower Group. So after my PhD program, I went to Manpower Group. It was their first data scientist, and it was like a kid in a candy shop, right? We had, that company put 600,000 people to work every day. So just mountains and mountains of data. And we did this project, partnered with Google and with Cognizant, and we launched this massive project, and it was called the 10X Project. And the goal of the 10X Project was to effectively predict outcomes in hiring and predict outcomes in performance based on resume data. So looking at individual resumes, using natural language processing, using big data, and trying to effectively predict who would be successful in the world of work. Any thoughts on how that went? Didn't go so well. So after going through this project, we found zero predictive value in a resume's ability to predict anything about someone's performance and work. Zero predictive value. So then we went a layer back and said, okay, well, maybe it can't predict the performance, but maybe it can predict who's going to get hired. No, that didn't work either. So zero predictive value on who was going to get hired. The only thing that we were able to predict was the likelihood that a certain recruiter would invite someone for an interview. So what does that tell us? Not a whole lot. But it tells us that people are kind of basing decisions, again, just off of resumes. They're just looking at the words on a page and matching it to figure out how that best fits a job description. So the folks in the room at Manpower Group and with Google and Cognizant were pretty pissed. They were not happy with this outcome. I, on the other hand, coming from the world of academia, we're excited about failure, right? Failure tells us something. This is good. So I was excited because what this told me was that I haven't been wrong all these years, and that you can't distill potential into a resume, and that there's very little value that these pieces of paper actually have. And so when you start to think about that, it starts to kind of create all these other ideas and avenues to think about, okay, what could we do? The good news is, that project kind of, ended there and came to a close. But the good news is there is a better way. And this is exactly what we're doing at Avenica. So what we do at Avenica is we've created a supply-side career launching platform. Effectively, what we do is we provide access, data, and coaching. And so through access, data, and coaching, we can effectively reach a much larger audience. We can better assess who's actually going to be good at a certain job, what kind of industry somebody's going to be successful in, but even more so, what kind of team somebody will really be successful in, right? So all of this is available through data that is regularly shared, but it's just never looked at because we only focus on the resume. It's like we've got blinders on and we can't see anything but this resume. So what we've been able to do is look at access data and then coaching to close any skill gap to really start to unleash human potential. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we do each of these steps. So when it comes to access, what we're doing here is we're creating a massive funnel. We attract anywhere from 300 to 500 candidates, 300 to 500 applicants every single day. So 300 to 500 people come to us every single day and engage in our process. They engage in our process, and we're not filtering people out by their resume. We're not selecting who can move forward by any sort of standard means. What we are doing is we're putting the human being, the candidate, the job seeker, at the forefront of the process. So it's all self-guided. So they move through the process as based on the decisions that they make and on their own work, not on some sort of arbitrary decision from a recruiter. The next piece of that is called levels. And this is where we're factoring in data and also kind of really understanding what people can do. So basically, people come in, we assess them through our Halo assessment, which basically tells us a lot about who this person is, their quirks, their passions, their strengths, their fears, all sorts of information. And then what we do is we put them into an environment where we can assess their actual real world capabilities. So we'll do things like send them a link to a website that they have to go to. They go to this website, the website will play a video. They'll be told in the email that they receive that they can view this video once, they cannot pause it, they cannot watch it again, sort of like Mission Impossible, combusts when it's done. And at the end, they will be asked to synthesize the 3 main points of this video, and then email an individual or an email address, and that email address will not be provided again, right? So we're assessing, are they reading the email? Are they looking at it thoroughly? Are they following directions? Are they prepared? Is there comprehension? Are they going through the right steps? Because let's be honest, especially in the entry-level space, as you're starting your career, sometimes these are the most basic things, right? These are some of the most basic things, is following directions, reading things thoroughly and doing what you're told so that you can learn how to do the job that you're doing. Because as an undergrad major in political science, I will tell you, that didn't translate into the world of work all that great, right? So you have to be able to learn things on the job. So what we do through this process is we're assessing, again, are these people following directions? Are they doing what they're asked to do? But on top of that, we acknowledge that finding a job also is kind of a terrible process. So part of the content that we're showing them, this is a clip of one of the videos that we use, is based on trying to provide some coaching to individuals about how to effectively message their story, how to tell their story, and how to articulate sort of the cultural wealth journey that they've been on. And then, again, we're asking them to send an email synthesizing these points. When we receive that email, we can assess the writing ability. We can assess, did they pay attention? Did they get the gist of the video? Did they actually comprehend this? So all sorts of different pieces of information. From there, we identify one individual, we kind of understand who is this person. Again, that's like the access point. We're understanding what are they able to do? What are some of their core skills? Like what drives them, skills, quirks, preferences, all that sort of stuff. And then we provide a host of learning opportunities where we can basically say, okay, you have all the right skills to do this, or all the right sort of DNA to do this sort of role. We're just missing this one skill, right? Maybe it's this one technology. It's Tableau. It's Power BI. It's ChatGPT. It's whatever. And we can, interject, as Gary, our CRO, mentioned earlier, with a +1 skill, right? We can try to engage and offer some sort of skill that helps them close that gap and accelerate their career. One of the things I'm really excited about as we're building this out is starting to look at people that have already launched their career and starting to think about how they move from that first job into that next job, and what are those couple of skills that they may need to get there. And in some cases, one skill can mean $20,000 to $30,000 more per year, right? One skill that can be acquired sometimes on a weekend, like on one weekend, could add $20,000 to $30,000 as long as it's provided in the right context. So ton of potential value there. The next piece is, and this is where Gary, who you met earlier, and his team have been really, really vital, is understanding the other side, right? So we've been super passionate at Avenica about kind of mapping the human genome of potential and understanding candidates and really trying to understand who they are and what they might do. But there's a whole nother piece of this equation, right? Which is the employer side, which is what do employers need? What are they looking for? What are the boxes they have to check? Because especially as we've talked to people in TA and HR, there's challenges, there's doubts, and like they can believe in something, but it's hard to champion that to other people. So one of the things that we've developed is this thing called Hire Genome. And effectively what we're doing with Hire Genome is we're working with hiring partners and we're mapping, in the same way that we're mapping this sort of DNA of a candidate, we're doing the same thing with hiring partners. And we're taking them through a process where we can really start to understand the preferences of a team, the quirks, the little things, even like, is your team made up of like early morning people? Are they sports fans? Are they, are they all crazy about Harry Potter? Who knows? But like sometimes those things will lead to the context of conversations. It's the way that communication happens. It's how analogies or things are explained. And so sometimes having that bit of information can be super valuable. So we take hiring partners through this process. They get to make selections, and they get to sort of tell us and help us understand the ideal candidates for their positions. What's interesting is we also then do some of the same candidate evaluation of some of the higher performers currently doing that position. And it's interesting because a lot of the results that we get from looking at a job description, the individuals that are performing highest on these teams would never qualify today. They would never qualify because job descriptions have become more and more robust, and there's more skills and more requirements. So we're really kind of mapping what the hiring partner need is and really understanding the pain points and really understanding what kind of individual will be successful in that context. Because I don't care who you are, if you're in the wrong environment, you can be the most talented person on the planet, the Chicago Bears, right? It's where talent goes to die. You could be the most talented person on the planet, but if you're on the wrong team, it's not going to work, right? You're not going to flourish. You need the support. You need the scaffolding. The good news is that it works. Shocking. Where resumes can't predict outcomes, they can't predict job fit, they can't predict performance, all of the other data, all of the other stuff absolutely can. And so what we're finding is after launching thousands of careers, not only are we effectively predicting who's going to be a top performer, we're also realizing that a lot of the nonsense bias that has plagued the hiring system for years that all of us are trying to address is naturally being weeded out because we're not selecting people based on the name that's on a resume or the school that they went to or if they went to a school, right? We're looking at the individual, the work they're willing to do, and the steps they're willing to take. So what we found is that we're, placing, and actually I have to update that. I say that every time I do this, and I never update it. But the number of BIPOC candidates that we've placed in the last 18 months is actually 67%. So we have kind of, without any real intention behind it, created a process of funneling diverse candidates through our system and placing them into high growth careers. One of my favorite. One of those candidates is Gigi Watkins, who we placed at Allstate. Gigi Watkins is an interesting story because she applied to work at Allstate 5 times on her own. 5 times within a course of 2 years. 5 times. She was granted exactly 0 interviews. And not even like a first round, like check the box, do you have a pulse kind of interview. It was 0 interviews. We placed her. She got promoted within a year and now leads one of her employee resource groups. Maybe we're doing something wrong. Right? So, invariably, kind of as I close up here, invariably someone, I don't know who it is, but probably maybe 2 to 4 to 15 of you will come up to me at some point today or to somebody on our team and say, I wish this was around when I was coming out of school, when I was launching my career. How many people have thought that as I've been talking? Anybody? A lot of you. It wasn't. Sorry. We failed you. But here's the good news. The only way that this starts to, sort of take hold and that we start to think differently, even about, the next job and the dream job, is to start getting people to think differently about the first job, right? If we can get people to think differently about the first job and we can start to prove that high performers come from all walks of life and come from different backgrounds and it's not exactly the profile that everyone's always thought of, then we can start to make the case that should exist at the next level. and at the next level, and at the next level. And we could truly start to change the workforce. We could truly start to tap into the actual potential that exists within the population of this country. One of my sort of favorite things is that based on the current process of hiring, most organizations are today only looking at 14% of the available talent that could do the job that they're looking for. 14%. That's all they're willing to even do a first round screen with. 14%. And when people start talking about like talent shortages or the war on talent, and they're going through the process and they're only looking at people, they're only looking at that 14%, there's a better way to do that. So with that, my time is up. I thank you and hope you come by our table and we can chat more. Thanks.